Welcome to the 41st video in the Just In Case series that are sponsored by Quality and Equality, an OD consultancy firm based in Oxford, United Kingdom. And my name is Mayan Chung Judge, the founder of the firm. And this series is called Just In Case, is in the lifelong learning tradition that organization development practitioners should just grasp any opportunity to remind themselves, refresh themselves, or learn something new. Today, we welcome back Dick and Emily Axelrod, who did a fantastic video for us in video number 22 on engagement in the conference model. Dick and Emily has lifelong experience in working with organization on employee involvement, particular about large-scale change. Their books on terms of engagement, Let's Stop Meeting Like This, and You Don't Have to Do It Alone, are filled with amazing insights to help people to know how to actually work with others, from meeting in small group to big group, and how to engage people with the organization agenda. I was amazed that one organization, the All-State company in United States, has actually used Emily and Dick's idea and end up finding themselves save $63 million in a process. Today, Dick and Emily are sharing with us one of their creation, which is wonderful and highly practical, which is the Meeting Canoe. And Dick and Emily introduce us to the Meeting Canoe, detail its history, describe the meeting fundamentals and how to lead engaged meetings, and unpack the neuroscience of effective meetings, plus how you and I can support other organizations to change their culture, one meeting at a time. They conclude with insights and suggestions on how best to actually improve in virtual meeting, which is something that we very, very excited to learn. So it's an information-packed video and filled with practical ideas. So make sure you have your notebook and get excited about what you can learn from Dick and Emily. So thank you for your offering of your time, Dick and Emily. So over to you.
Thank you, Mia. I am Emily Axelrod.
And I'm Dick Axelrod.
And we're from the Axelrod Group. We're a consulting firm, OD consulting firm that's been in business about 40-something years. And
we're creators of the Meeting Canoe. And so in this session, we'd like to really introduce you to the Meeting Canoe, tell you about its history and how it came about. We'll talk about meeting fundamentals, how to lead engaging meetings, what's the neuroscience of effective meetings, and how to change your culture one meeting at a time. And then we'll conclude with 7 steps to improve virtual meetings.
The Meeting Canoe came about because Dick and I were sitting around in the office one day reflecting on all of the large-scale meetings that we had held, and we said, what is it that we really do? And what we came up with is what you see here in the Meeting Canoe. We talked about the fact that the first part of the Meeting Canoe is welcoming people into the space, whatever the space. Now it's into the virtual space, at least in this time. Otherwise, it could be into a room. And so what do you do when you welcome people into the space? Well, you do that. You just make it a welcoming atmosphere. Last week, we had a large group meeting virtually. And what did they do when they welcomed people into the space? They said hello and welcome by name into the space. They put them in the space, the virtual space they needed to be in. They helped them find their way. They did orientation. And then we started clearly with purpose. What is the purpose of this meeting? So in the welcome part, you want to be welcoming, help people feel comfortable, and be clear about what the purpose of the meeting is. And then we move into connection. And what you want to do there is to connect people to each other and to the purpose of the meeting. And both of these things help people feel more comfortable, also lead to more psychological safety, so people feel comfortable to talk about whatever the subject of the meeting might be. And then we move on into the middle there, which is the discover. And that's really talking about what is the current reality that you're living with right now in your work. And we move from, after we talk about that, discover different things about that, look at it in multiple different ways. It's like, I was doing a word puzzle last night, and in the word puzzle, do the words come down this way? Do they go that way? From the top, from the bottom? You just look at it in multiple different ways and then come to whatever conclusions you come to. And then we think about, well, what do we really want to happen for the future? So elicit your dreams. What do you want to have? And that's the next part. What are the future? What are the future possibilities? Where can we go with this? Next, we come to decide. And you have to be clear about how the decision is going to be made before you even start the meeting. And that should be part of the information that people have and know about. So the decision is made, closes down the canoe just a bit, but opens up many other possibilities. And the last thing you do is attend to the end. And when you attend to the end, what do? Well, you look at the decisions. What are the decisions that we've made and who's going to do what? How did the meeting go? Just a few minutes about what could we maybe do a little bit better next time. And then what are the next steps? Where are we going with this? So that is the meeting canoe. And what I want to emphasize here is that's a system. The whole process is a system. It all hangs together. So you don't leave out any parts of the system. But what you might do in a shorter meeting or whatever is you might focus on one particular part of the system. A lot of times people focus most of their time on the current reality. The pieces they leave out mostly are the welcome and the attend to the end. And what we need, if you look at a canoe, where is it most dangerous when you're getting into the canoe? It's in the beginning, when you're climbing into the beginning of the canoe, the first part, and when you're getting out of the canoe. So those two pieces really need a lot more attention in most meetings than they're given.
Yeah, it's the part that people usually ignore.
Yes.
They're in such a rush to get into the meat of the meeting. I'd like to take another look at the canoe, which is, if you looked at the canoe from the top, what you see is that the canoe's narrow at the beginning, it widens out in the middle, and then it's narrow again at the end. So that the middle part, the discovering where things are and eliciting people's dreams, is the place where you have most possibilities. And what we're doing there is creating a tension between the current state and the future state. And that tension, one way we think about it sometimes is like a rubber band. So the tension between future and current state creates energy. If you've only got future and you don't have current state, then the rubber band is limp. And in the same token, if you've only got current state and no future, the rubber band is limp. So we're trying to create the tension for moving forward. So that's the place where we got the most possibilities. As we move into deciding, you start to narrow, you've eliminated some possibilities. So the canoe starts to narrow things down. But at the other level, what it does is it starts to open up new possibilities around the things that you've chosen. So if you look at the canoe from the top, think about it as a conversation that starts out narrow in the beginning, widens out when we're looking at discovering the way things are and eliciting people's dream, and then narrows down as we decide and attend to the end. So one of the ways we think about meetings is productive work. And if you begin to think about meetings as productive work, the things that need to be in your meeting is meaning. Okay? That's the thing Emily was talking about around purpose. So the meeting has to have meaning for the people involved. There needs to be a chance to learn and grow in the meeting so that I've learned something new or I've seen a different perspective. There has to be a challenge, because the challenge really begins to stimulate the brains. There has to be a sense of autonomy, meaning in this case that the people in the room really have some control and can really make things happen. And then you need to have a way of having some feedback built into your meeting. How are we progressing on the agenda? How are we making decisions? So people can see progress as they go through the meeting. So turn it back to Emily now, and we're going to talk about meeting fundamentals.
So mastering meeting fundamentals. Fundamentals are things like, why are you meeting? That's purpose. That's your North Star. Got to be really clear about why you are meeting. Where are you meeting? Well, that used to be all about rooms and space. Now it's about platforms. So if you have a team meeting, what makes in a room a really good team meeting? If you have one on a platform, what platform is best? And if you're working in some sort of businesses, they only allow you to use certain ones because of security issues. So a lot of people use Zoom. That was one of the first ones out. Now you've got thousands, at least, of people creating different platforms for different kind of meetings. If you want to hold an open space, there's one that is just done exactly for open space. So you have to think about what kind of platform really fits for your meeting, and then about what. So what are we going to do in this meeting? What are the steps in this meeting in order to get us to where we want to go? And then with whom? Who needs to be in the meeting? We always particularly think about people that have authority, people that are impacted, people that know how to make decisions, people that will speak differently and push back at you to make you think a bit better. So just thinking along those lines, those are some of the fundamental things that we begin to think about when we think about having a meeting.
Leaders have a lot of power. They can convene the meeting. Oftentimes they decide, the things Emily was just talking about, the where and the why and who's going to be involved. So we want leaders to use your power well as you lead effective meetings. So, one thing a leader can do is invite feedback, because, that sort of prevents them from being yes. So, you can offer up an idea and say, well, if I were sitting in your shoes, that might be the stupidest thing I've ever heard. So you can invite criticism, you invite people into the conversation as opposed to just having to take your ideas verbatim. You can begin to frame the meeting as a learning experience, and there's a couple, there's several learnings that are going on right now. So, one is we're learning to work virtually, we're learning to work across different platforms, but it's also we're learning how to run this project. We're learning how to create a new vision for the organization. Whatever the purpose of your meeting is, frame it as a learning experience, because what that does is it allows people to admit mistakes, because when we're learning, we all know that we make mistakes as we go along. Emily talked about this earlier. It's important to make your decision rules clear at the outset. If you as a leader are just wanting feedback out of this meeting, let people know that. If you're asking the group to consult with you and you're going to make the decision later, let people know that. If this is a decision that's open to the whole group, let people know that. Because the thing that people hate is to think they were operating under one set of rules, like we're all trying to reach consensus here, when in fact there was only one voice in the room that counted, which was the leader. So really be clear about your decision rules. And then, the more you can be honest, the more you can show transparency, the better it is. And also expect honesty. Let people know that, you don't want, to be told things just because you're the leader, but we need to have free flow of information between each other. And part of that being honest and expecting honesty is doing a lot of listening. Seek to understand the different points of view. And then you can also begin to share what we call the different leadership roles. So you might appoint someone in the group to be the discussion leader to make sure we stay on the agenda. Maybe someone to manage time so that you're staying within whatever time boundaries you have, and somebody to take notes of what we see with a lot of leaders is they often try to do all these things at once in terms of leading the meeting. And it's, in some ways, it's an impossible task. So spread your leadership, let other people have roles in the meeting. And what that does is it starts to share the ownership for the meeting's success. One of the things is, to speak up and encourage other people to speak up. So if you've got quiet people in your meeting, say, well, Emily, what are you thinking about this? Or, and invite people into the conversation. Help people to take responsibility for the outcome. So, one thing that happens in meetings is, well, it's the leader's meeting, and so I don't have to be responsible for whether it's a good meeting or a bad meeting. So what I can do is just sit back and let the meeting fail. So try to build that responsibility in. Build in time for reflections. Take breaks, particularly virtually. Take frequent breaks. If it's a longer meeting, maybe instead of it being a full day, do 2 half-day sessions, or do a morning session with a good break in the afternoon for an hour and a half or 2 hours, and then come back. Encourage people to build on others' ideas and say, okay, how can we make this work? And really both listen and encourage other people to listen. Then the last thing I want to talk about is something called roll holes. So, if I'm sitting in a meeting and I see that, we're getting off task, I can sit back and let the leader do that. Or I can say, are these really the conversations we need to be having here? Or you can say, I'm worried about the time, or, but think that's part of being responsible for the outcome. See what's missing in this meeting. And then if you've got the skill and the ability, speak up and encourage those behaviors that will lead towards the meeting's success. So those are some of the behaviors that we think help make any meeting better.
One of the very first things we want to talk about is that you need to have a clear agenda. Why do we need a clear agenda? Because that reduces the threat. And with neuroscience, we understand that you can threat. There's the threat part, and there's the encourage part, getting people to feel comfortable and be able to feel good about what they're doing. When I feel threatened, I shut down most of the time. If I feel encouraged and accepted, then I'm going to take part in that meeting. So what we want to be really clear about is that we want to reduce threat and encourage people to feel comfortable and speak up when it's appropriate.
And what Emily's talking about, encouragement, leads to the reward state. And when people feel rewarded, they're more collaborative, they're more innovative. So we're trying to move from threat to reward, and having an agenda that gives you a sense of certainty does that. The next piece is that your brain can only attend to one thing at a time. So, not multitasking, although people can do it, it really forces your attention. It splits your attention so that you're not able to really concentrate on what's going on. So really encourage people to only be doing one thing at a time.
And then the third thing is you want to work to create a respectful atmosphere among the people. It's like in order to create psychological safety, because I talked about that when I talked about the model. And if people don't feel safe, then they're not going to participate fully, and you're going to miss out on some good stuff. So you really want to create that respectful atmosphere. You want people to feel comfortable, to be able to talk, to be able to speak their truth. And even if it's speak their truth to power, you want that kind of an atmosphere in your meeting. So because it'll help you get things done and help you move your organization along.
So the next piece is we're calling insights occur when you let the brain go idle. So that occurs during breaks. If you have a multi-day meeting, it occurs in overnight thoughts. It's what happens when you take, you can even, let's get into winter now, but you can encourage people to take a break away from the screen, take a walk around your house, do something that gets you away from the current content. And what we all know is that we get different insights or different ideas when we're not forcing ourselves to focus on the problem.
And then number 5 is the brain needs stimulation to perform. So people need challenging. That rewards the brain. So you want to have those challenges there for them. And most organizations have lots of challenges, which is really good. But you also don't want to get stuck in something too long. So you take the challenge, you work on whatever the issue is, you get your information, and then you move on to your next step.
The last one is what we call encouraging autonomy. And in this sense, we're talking about knowing that your voice counts. If you know your voice counts, it moves the brain towards a reward state. And it often doesn't mean that your idea has to be accepted. It often means that you were listened to and you were understood. That begins that process of moving towards the reward state. And if your idea is actually accepted, it moves it even better. So just to review, the neuroscience of effective meetings is having a clear agenda that reduces threat, attending to only one thing at a time, creating a respectful atmosphere, be sure you have time for insights to occur by letting the brain go idle. If we need challenge to really stimulate our brain during a meeting, and then to encourage autonomy by helping people to know that their voice counts. Meetings are a fast-track way to begin to shift your organization's culture. And I'd like to quote from Peter Block. He wrote a foreword for our book, Terms of Engagement. And in that foreword, he talked about culture. And he said, the structure, aliveness, deadness, whisper or shout of the meeting teaches and persuades us more about the culture of the workplace than all the speeches about core values and the new culture we're striving for. So that your meeting's an artifact. Okay? The way you make decisions, the way you meet, even the way the rooms are set up or what platforms you use. These are all cultural artifacts of your organization. So that if you can begin to pay attention to what's going on in your meetings and use things like the Meeting Canoe and begin to shift your meetings, that's the first step in beginning to shift the culture of your organization. So this is something we're thinking a lot about these days, about how meetings can be used to shift your organization's culture. And the neat thing about that is that the meeting's under control of the leader. You don't need a big cultural change program to begin to shift meetings. You can begin to do it in your day-to-day, everyday meetings. So begin to think about your meetings as both cultural artifacts and vehicles for shifting your culture.
So if you want to get everybody in your organization to pay attention to something and you want to have a meeting, then you want everybody to contribute. So how do you do that? So you have a meeting and you make sure if they don't contribute, you call on them. So that begins to, one, get more voices in, and certainly some that probably you've never heard. And it's amazing what kind of information comes out of people that don't normally speak up when you set up some sort of a system that does that. And then that can then move out to the other meetings that people begin to have in the organization. And we've seen this really work.
Seven steps to improve virtual meetings. Things we've been learning about as we've been working more and more with virtual meetings because of COVID. So the first thing is to know your platform. Different platforms, they all have their own strengths and weaknesses. So this goes back to purpose of what Emily was talking about earlier. So be clear about your purpose and then have a platform that will support your purpose. If you need a platform, if you want lots of breakouts, you need a platform that does that. If you want to be able to show video, what's a good platform for using video? So understand the strengths and the weaknesses of your platform and then make sure that it supports your purpose.
All right, and do a technology check. We've just come off one from last week. We did technology checks, but we found out all kinds of things because we're doing it through a large organization. So we had several mishaps with the technology, and it's just really important. Is the audio working? Is the video working? Can people talk across to each other? How's it going to work? And most of the meetings that we've done, somebody's doing the technology and somebody's doing the facilitation, and that we have found that that's really helpful, because somebody can then pay all their attention to technology and making sure that goes well, and then we can do what we know how to do, which is to facilitate the meeting.
And the more people you have, the more the technology check and having people to do that really becomes important. And our kind of watchword is, if it can go wrong, it will go wrong. Because the meeting Emily was talking about, what we realized was that this was being done over a corporate network, and because we had so many people in the meeting, they thought that, and they were all virtual, they thought that it was a security threat to the organization. So the IT department shut down the whole internet, or not the internet, but their network. So, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. The next thing is, you can begin to shift some things that you might do in the meeting offline. So think about pre-work for people to do, so they come prepared to talk. Make sure they understand the agenda, and get that ahead of time. So think about things that you can take outside of the meeting, move those into pre-work, and so that your time in the meeting is really valuable.
And when people check in, make it personal and professional. There are lots of different ways. I know I've been on meetings where you're asked to sign in 15 or 30 minutes earlier. They put you in a little group and you introduce yourself, talk to people about things that you basically in common. One meeting I had in was what was a hobby that you had. So it just depends on the kind of meeting and what needs to happen in terms of a check-in.
Yeah, we even had one where they put up different pictures of people, and they shared fun facts about each other. So just different ways to keep it both personal and professional. The other thing you can do is keep people focused by calling on them. And that one thing that we found very useful is, if you're using a chat and you start to see comments in chat, is to ask people, well, could you tell us a little more about the comment that you made? And so that brings people into the meeting and makes this chat discussion a lot livelier.
The other thing is variety. I don't know about you, but sitting looking at a screen for a long time, I can get kind of off into space. But with variety, that keeps me there. So things like polls, breakout groups, discussions in chat, fun things that people enjoy doing. One of the things they did last week was they had a this and a that for their organization. So it's just lots of variety to keep people engaged, variety and including breaks. Lots of breaks. I think at this point it's about 10 or 15 minutes an hour for a break to keep people really engaged in a virtual meeting.
You mean one break every hour for,
yeah.
10 or 15 minutes?
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. Okay. And you don't want them to let it go more than an hour and a half. Last is attending to the end. So we talked about that from the Meeting Canoe. Review your decisions and assignments. Talk about what worked in this meeting, what didn't work. How can we make the meeting more effective? And particularly reviewing the decisions and assignment. Let me go back to that for a moment. What that does is it clarifies what happened in the meeting, and be surprised how many times people think that they decided on one thing when it was really different. Or I may have thought that Emily was supposed to do something and she thought I was going to do something. So that review at the end of the meeting is really important. So know your platform, do a technology chat, try to get things out ahead of time and move things into pre-work, have check-ins, call on people, introduce variety, and make sure you attend to the end. What we want to do now is just kind of summarize where we've been. We talked about the Meeting Canoe and its history. We've talked about meeting fundamentals and what are the basics you have to have to really make a meeting work, the who, what, why, and where, what it takes to lead an engaging meeting, and the neuroscience of effective meetings. We touched briefly on culture and how you could change your culture one meeting at a time. And we closed to 7 steps to improve virtual meetings. So we invite you to take the Meeting Canoe for a ride, take a spin, try it in your organization, and see how it works.
And also, we have a book called Let's Stop Meeting Like This. And all of this information is in the book and more.
Plus other resources, blogs and video on our website, axelrodgroup.com. So thanks for being with us today, and take that Meeting Canoe for a ride.
On behalf of everybody, may I thank Dick and Emily for your rich presentation about meetings and the Meeting Canoe. I really appreciate about your 7-step to improve virtual meeting as relevant and timely information for many of us. If you'd like to contact Dick and Emily, all their information and their biography and relevant resources are at the end of the video. So thank you very much, Dick and Emily, for donating your time to make this video for the benefit of the OD practitioner community. And thank you, all of you who watched this video. Let's continue to humanize the workplace and make things work for people, whether we are online or offline.